54 in the third set. KTMCN sends a forehand wide, and the 12,000 people inside Scotiabank Arena in Toronto jump out of their seats, screaming like they're at a basketball game. But Eala just stops. She doesn't celebrate. She doesn't raise her arms. She puts her hands over her face right there in the middle of the court, and she cries. Now rewind 40 minutes. Same court, same night, same woman. Except this time she is sitting in a chair with her legs stretched out in front of her, and a trainer is on one knee wrapping tape around her ankle. Nobody in that building knows if she is going to be able to finish the match. Now rewind 14 days. This woman has never won a WTA title in her life. Not one ever. So if you set an alarm for 4 in the morning to watch this match, if you were on your feet in your living room in Manila or Toronto or New Jersey, if you texted someone in your family the second that last ball went wide, this video is for you. Because I think you already know something happened on Friday night that was bigger than a fourth-round match. But here is what I don't think you know yet. You watched the match. You saw the tape. You saw the tears. You saw the crowd. And I am telling you that you watched the easiest part of that story to see. The hardest part to see was happening the entire time, and almost nobody has talked about it. Because that woman on the court with her hands over her face is not crying about KTMCN. She has beaten far bigger names than KTMCN alone. She has beaten 4 of them. So here is the question this whole video is built on. How does a person go from having nothing to having an entire stadium on the other side of the planet crying with her in 14 days on one good ankle? And more than that, what did it actually cost her to get there? Because there is a version of this story that says she got hot, she got lucky, she got a good draw. That version is everywhere right now. That version is wrong. The real story does not start in Toronto. It does not start in Washington. It starts on an island in Spain in front of stands that were completely empty, and it goes through the single worst night of her career. So how do you get from there to here in 2 weeks on one good ankle? To understand that, you have to go a lot further back than 2 weeks. Eala grew up in a country of more than 100 million people that had almost no tennis. Think about what that actually means. The Philippines had Manny Pacquiao. It had boxing and it had basketball. And basketball was not a sport there so much as a language. Hoops nailed to telephone poles. Courts painted onto the street. Games running until somebody turned the lights off. If you were a kid in Quezon City with talent and a dream, the country already had a shape waiting for you to grow into. What it did not have was a tennis player. Not a great one, not a famous one, not a single woman who had ever gone out there on the biggest stages in the sport and won something that mattered. There was no name to look up to, no poster on a wall, no blueprint at all. And when Eala was still a kid, she got on a plane to Mallorca, Spain to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy. I want you to actually sit with that for a second, because we say things like that too quickly in sports documentaries. She moved abroad to train. T sounds like an achievement. It sounds like a headline. It is not a headline when you are the one living it. It means your childhood happens about 15 hours of flying time away from your family. It means the people who know you best watch you grow up through a phone screen and a time zone that never lines up. It means birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays are all being spent somewhere that does not sound like home, does not smell like home, does not eat like home. And it means you are 11, 12, 13 years old, and you are already a professional in everything but title. Now here's the part almost nobody thinks about, and it is the part that matters most for this video. For years, there was nobody in the stands. I mean that literally. Junior tournaments, small events, practice courts in the morning on an island where most people could not point to the Philippines on a map. No flags, no chants, no crowd, just the sound of a ball and a coach and the wind coming off the Mediterranean. She was not playing for a country that was watching. She was playing for a country that did not know yet. And that is a very specific kind of loneliness. T is not the loneliness of being ignored. It is the loneliness of carrying something nobody handed you. Because that is what she was doing out there. She was not just chasing a career. She was carrying an entire sport for a nation that had never had one. And nobody had asked her to. And nobody had prepared her for it. And there was no one ahead of her on the road to tell her whether the road even went anywhere. If she could not do it, nobody was going to do it. That was the actual math. And I think a lot of you already understand exactly what that feels like, even if you have never held a racket in your life. Because this is the story of anybody who left home for a chance. Anybody who moved across an ocean and had to be twice as good just to be taken half as seriously. Anybody whose parents got on a plane once and never fully got off it. Anybody who has ever been the first person in their family to try something with no map for it. You already know how heavy that is. And you know that when somebody like that finally wins, it is never just about them. So, if you were one of the people who celebrated on Friday night like she was your cousin, like she was your daughter, like she was somebody you had known your whole life, then you already understand the rest of this video before I say it. Subscribe because I am going to be with you for every match of this run. And the story is not close to finished. For years, she played in front of stands that were basically empty. Which is why what happened next almost broke her, and why almost nobody outside the Philippines even noticed when it did. January. Australian Open. First round. Eala wins the opening set. 6-love. 6-0. Not a good set. Not a comfortable set. A shutout at a Grand Slam in the first round. That is not winning a set. That is a statement. That is a player announcing she has arrived, and the rest of the draw should probably start paying attention. And then she loses the second set. And then she loses the third. And then she is out of a Grand Slam in the first round after being one set away from cruising through it, beaten by Alicia Parks. I want to be very precise about why that specific loss is the darkest point in the story, because on paper it is just a first-round exit, and players have those all the time. Losing because you are not good enough is one thing. It hurts, but it is clean. You go back, you work, you close the gap. Everybody in sports understands that loss. This was the other kind. This was losing after you had already proven you were better. She did not get overpowered. She got ahead, all the way ahead, and then she could not finish. And that loss does not send you back to the practice court with a plan. That loss sends you home with a question. Am I the kind of person who closes? Here is my first question for you, and I want you to hold on to it because it is going to come back. If you win a set at a Grand Slam 6-0, what exactly has to happen inside the next 2 hours for you to lose the match? Not physically. Physically, nothing changed. She was not more tired at the start of the second set than she was at the end of the first. So what broke? Hold that because it goes deeper. Because that night in Melbourne was not an isolated bad evening. It was a pattern with a name. And the name followed her around for years. Prospect. That was the word. Prospect. Rising star. One to watch. She reached the semi-finals in Miami in 2025, and the entire tennis world learned her name overnight. And then she lost. She kept reaching the door. Semi-final, lost. Quarter-final, lost. Deep run, big win over somebody enormous, and then the last step, and then nothing. And I need you to understand what happens to that word over time. When you are 17, prospect is a compliment. It means the future belongs to you. When you are 19, it is still fine. It means be patient. But when you are 21, and you have beaten top 10 players, and you have played on the biggest courts in the world, and you still have 0 titles next to your name, prospect stops being a compliment. It starts being a verdict. It starts to sound like a polite way of saying she is very good at almost. Second question. How many times can a person walk up to the same door and fail to open it before they start believing the door is not for them? And here is the layer that almost nobody outside the Philippines ever saw, and it is the heaviest one. She was not losing alone. Every one of those matches was happening in the middle of the night back home. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and people were setting alarms for it. Families getting up in the dark. Groups of friends crowding around one laptop. Watch parties in living rooms in Manila and in Cebu and in Toronto and in Los Angeles and in Dubai. Everywhere Filipinos had gone looking for a life. And when she lost, none of those people said anything cruel. That is not what happened. What happened is worse and quieter. They just turned the stream off and went back to bed in the dark in silence. And got up 3 hours later and went to work. Multiply that by millions of people, and by every deep run that ended one match short over years, and that is the weight she was carrying onto a tennis court. Not pressure from critics. Something much harder to put down. The weight of people who love you being disappointed on your behalf, and being too kind to ever say it. And here is my last question before we go on, and it is the one that should genuinely worry you. Where exactly does a player like that find the thing she is missing? Because it is not fitness. She was one of the fittest players on tour. It is not talent. Egate would find that out at Wimbledon. T is not coaching. She trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy, one of the best facilities that has ever existed. It is the thing nobody can give you. The thing you cannot practice and cannot buy and cannot inherit from a coach. The certainty in the exact moment when the match is there in your hands that you are the person who takes it. She did not have that. There is no drill for it. There is no schedule for when it arrives. And in January of this year, Eala left Melbourne with 0 WTA titles, a first-round exit, a set she had won 6 games to nothing, and the name Alicia Parks written down somewhere she was never going to forget. Because 7 months later, that same name was going to be waiting for her in Toronto, Washington, D.C. The final. Her first ever WTA final. 21 years old. And the last match of the tournament. Jessica Pegula on the other side of the net. World number 3. Top seed. A player who had already beaten her once before in that Miami semi-final in 2025 in 3 sets. The match that made Eala famous and left her with nothing to show for it. And then it rains. Almost 3 hours of rain on Sunday. They stop. They wait. They eventually give up and push the whole thing to Monday. Think about what that does to a person. She has to go home and eat dinner and lie down and try to sleep with the biggest match of her entire life sitting unfinished. 24 hours alone with it, 24 hours of every voice in your head getting a chance to speak. She comes back Monday and she loses the first set, 6-3. And if you were watching in Manila at 4 in the morning, you already knew this movie. You had seen it in January. You had seen it in Miami. You knew the shape of it by heart. Eala gets close. Eala hangs with the best player in the world for a set, and then the last step does not happen. And everybody says what a wonderful future she has, and everybody goes back to bed. Then she won the second set 6-4. Okay, so now it is a decider. Now it is one set for the first title in the history of Philippine tennis. And every single thing we just spent 5 minutes talking about is standing on that court with her. Melbourne. The word prospect. All those doors she could not open. Everything. And then this happened. 6-love. 6 games to nothing in a final against the world number 3. She did not just win that set. She erased the woman across the net from it. 6 consecutive games on the biggest afternoon of her life. 1 match after a rain delay. Against a player who had beaten her before. Now stop and look at what that number actually is. 6-love. It is the exact scoreline she put on the board in Melbourne in January. The exact same number. In Melbourne, she won a set 6-love and then lost the match. In Washington, she lost the first set and then won 6-love. The scoreline that destroyed her became the weapon she finished with. And this is the moment the whole story turns. And I want to be extremely clear about why, because most people are going to tell you the turning point was the title. It was not. The title is a result. Results are what happened after the change, not the change itself. Here is what actually changed. For her entire career up to that Monday, Eala was a frontrunner. And I do not mean that